Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for your support on Facebook, especially, and gaining numbers on YouTube and on Rumble. And I can appreciate that too. But I cover a lot of different subjects here on the Dave Emmons Strange Reality Show, and it's a strange reality. Most of the topics that I talk about, UFOs, ETs, and I love the topic of Bigfoot. And we have a guest today, Todd M. Neiss, and he's been in this research for a long time, and he's got a lot of involvement. We're going to try to cover a lot of stuff here, a lot of ground in 1 hour, but Todd's got so much to cover, so but we're going to get right down to it. But everybody stay cool out there. It's really hot here. I don't know what it is out on the west coast. Todd, is it hot out there too?
It's actually pretty pleasant right now, and we certainly don't have the humidity you've got over there. I mean, my wife and I just returned from spending 6 weeks in Arkansas, and it was like a sauna, I'll tell you.
Oh,
And I know just
it's
keeping in touch with the family, it's really hot today. I think it's going to be 103 there in Little Rock.
yeah, it's that here at 100 now, 101 tomorrow, in Illinois, in the Midwest here. So, but I you live on the West Coast, and that's Bigfoot territory, Todd. But I'm going to introduce. This is Todd M. Neiss. This is Dave Emmons, a Strange Reality. In case I got lost in some of this banner. Bigfoot witness turned researcher Todd M. Neiss has been an active investigator for over 29 years. Born and raised in the Pacific Northwest, he grew up hearing these legendary creatures, alternately known as Bigfoot or Sasquatch, and we'll find out exactly what they call them there. And as a sergeant, and thanks for your service again. You can see the medals there. He's got a lot more medals than me. He was in for 20 years, and I was just in for 3. So he's done a fine job in retirement as a sergeant in
Oh,
the,
wow.
the 120. It's the 1249th Combat Engineer Battalion. He came face to face with not one, but 3 elusive giants in the temperate rainforest of Oregon's coast while conducting high explosives training. While training, he ran into these. He's been researching, he's had boots on the ground from the coast, West Coast, and he's been to Alaska, California, Nebraska, Arkansas, Oklahoma, British Columbia. So he's been working really hard at it, and that's why I've been trying to get him on the show. We've had a scheduling problem once or twice, and finally I got him here. So I just want to pick his brain about what's going on with Bigfoot. Okay, an introduction here. Founder and president of the American Primate Conservancy, a nonprofit organization dedicated to the recognition and protection of Bigfoot. Retired combat veteran, U.S. Army 20 plus years, Iraq war veteran. Thanks for your service, buddy. Holds a degree in multidisciplinary studies, Grantham University. Grantham, I guess, Grantham. Host of annual researchers retreat Beachfoot, 16th anniversary this year. And welcome, Todd Neiss, to the show. Thank you so much for making time to come here. What your initial encounter? Could you
My
tell us
pleasure.
about that, and what got into your heart to really delve into this topic?
Well, I think I should start out by just uh, saying that I was a non-believer. I've lived in the Pacific Northwest all my life, and you can't help but hear the stories, the tales, the urban legend, if you will, about the, these creatures that I honestly, being an avid hunter, hiker, climb mountains, go fish, get out in the woods quite a bit. In fact, I live right here in the Mount Hood National Forest, the foot of Mount Hood. Never saw any evidence. Certainly, never saw the creatures, and so I kind of wrote it off as just a campfire tale, just to, you know, keep kids in line, what have you, like there are so many. But I mean, uh, on April 3rd, 1993, that all changed for me. As you mentioned, I was a combat engineer, and a lot of what we do as combat engineers, as I'm sure you're aware of, involves high explosives. Our mission is mobility, counter mobility, so we we breach minefields, we put in minefields, we blow up bridges, we put in bridges. So whatever it is that we need to get our movement elements uh, advanced and stop the enemy, that's what we do, and that involves a lot of explosives. So on this particular day, we had special permission to get access to some private timber company holdings in Clackamas County, the very extreme northwest of the state of Oregon. And so they offered to us these three gravel quarries that they had on their property. And so we had basically three different training scenarios there. One was cutting steel I-beams to represent taking out a bridge, if you will. Second one was clearing a path through a minefield. And the third and final site was cratering charge. And you'd do a cratering charge to blow a road in half and just little crater it so nobody can use that road no more. And so we had set the fuses. We had done the first two explosions, and we just set the fuses on that third cratering charge. And so, you know, per SOP, we'd get in our vehicle, get the heck out of there, obviously, and find a safe area to wait for that explosion, and then go back and take our work. And I believe there were 5 vehicles. I was a passenger behind the driver of the second vehicle, which was a Humvee. And you know, I didn't have to watch, drive. I had the opportunity to kind of glance about the countryside. I had a window down because it was really a pretty nice day for April in the Coast Range, you know. So I just instinctively, I'm looking through wildlife here, for elk mainly, and I got, like I said, a little more than I bargained for. We came around this corner. It was kind of a slow, sweeping right-hand turn, and that second blast sight came into view. And I'm looking down there, and right in the middle, standing upright, were 3 jet black, dark figures. And my first instinct was, you know, what the hell are those people doing down there? Because we had very heavy security, as you can imagine. We actually had 2 rings of security just to make sure civilians wouldn't get in the area, you know, because the danger of what we're doing. And yet here's these 3 figures that didn't take me but a second to realize what I'm looking at were not people. They didn't fit the profile, the silhouette, if you will, of humans. The arms were all the way down past their knees. The legs were disproportionately long for a human, and I mean, they were built like bodybuilders, all 3 of them, but they were huge. There wasn't a stitch of clothing on them. They were just covered with hair, and they were observing us from across the ravine. They were staring at the convoy, and I, like I said, there's 3 of them. The one in the middle was the tallest of the group, and I estimate to be about 9 feet tall. Extremely broad shoulders. The 2 that flanked it on the left and right were, well, it came up to the shoulders of the bigger ones, so maybe 7.5 feet tall, but still way too big for people. And again, not the profile of a human at all. But the interesting thing about that's not interesting in itself, is the activity. The 2 left and right of that big one, so that big one stood there just like a statue, if you will. And so my bump stopped, so I just killed that. Sorry for the interruption. Anyway, the 2 left and right of that larger one were rocking side to side, shifting weight from one foot to the other, and in the process, these long pendulous arms are turning them back and forth, again below their knees. And they did that the entire time I watched them, and you know, speaking of time, this wasn't a 2, 3 second something ran across the road in front of my car. It's a Bigfoot kind of situation. I watched things for nearly half a minute, and I was just in shock, to be honest with you. I mean, this was an epiphany for me because, again, I didn't believe it existed, and I've hunted that particular unit for years.
Yeah.
Um,
Did other guys see it, Todd? You,
well, yeah, so this is if you bear with me, we
okay.
rounded this corner after about, let's say 25 seconds or so, and then I lost sight of them, and our staging area wasn't very far past that day, so it was like, I don't know, several hundred yards maybe. Later we pulled over, and I just instinctively jumped out of the Humvee and started jogging back in the direction we just came from while the rest of the vehicles were coming in. I wanted to get another view of them, right? So, um, I went as far as I dared. Our standard operating procedure was that everybody had to be accounted for and within eyesight. So I went as far as I dared, and I'm standing on my tiptoes. I got my hand up to my forehead. I'm straining to see over this
Yeah.
stupid little dirt mound that was blocking my view. And uh, unfortunately, I didn't get that second look I wanted. But while I'm doing that, I hear somebody yell out my name, and I look off to my right, and here comes Sergeant Martin. And he said, "Hey, Neiss." I go, "Yeah, what's up?" He goes, "What are you looking at?" I go, "Nothing." And got my hand on my side, and he continued to walk up to me. And I remember he was smoking on a cigarette, and he comes up and he takes one little last drag off the cigarette, and he kind of looks over at me, and of course he looked left and right to make sure nobody else was in earshot, and he looked around now and said, "I don't suppose you saw what I saw down at that second blast off." And I said, "I don't know, shit, what did you see?" And again, he kind of looked around and said, "I saw three huge hair covered, I don't know, Bigfoot, I guess." And at that, of course, I said, "Yeah, I saw him too." So to answer your question, was at that time, my first 6 years were in the National Guard, and so we would meet, you know, like once a month. Well, by the very next month, which would have been early May, we had two more soldiers come forward and uh, admit to witnessing what Jeff and I had seen. So, and who knows how many more may have seen them and just, you know, kept their mouth shut, but that's typically what people do. Frankly, that's what I did for quite some time before I made the decision to come forward publicly, because I think it was really important. But it, you know, when it comes to encounters with these things, it's rare that you have multiple eyewitnesses. It's even rarer that you have multiple animals.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, just the nature of what we're doing. I mean, we're out there blowing up their neighborhood, you know, and I'm talking big explosives, hundreds of pounds of TNT, dynamite, C4 explosives, ammonium nitrate, that kind of stuff, putting up a pretty big mushroom cloud, you know. So yeah, so that was my baptism into Bigfoot, and I've been doing it ever since, over 30 years now, and it's a fascinating field to study, and frankly, as long as the mainstream science community refuses to acknowledge it, it's open season for us citizen scientists, if you will, and
Yeah.
it's just been a fascinating journey. I can't. It just blows me away that those 25 seconds of my adult life at that time, I was 34. It absolutely changed the course of the rest of my life.
Yeah. I think when people see things that it's really they're not supposed to exist. Yeah, you're going to have that shock and belief, but shock and awe. But also, do you think, Todd, that the explosions brought these critters out?
Oh, absolutely. But you know, that's the odd thing about it, Dave. You'd think any animal, a cougar, bear, elk, deer, whatever, would go anywhere but to the actual source of the
Mhm.
explosion. And especially in the case of say, humans. Um, we're detonating a bomb every hour or two. And would you yourself walk into an area where this sort of activity is going on and risk not getting blown up yourself?
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so these, you know, animals are going to vacate that area, and yet here we're three of these beings, this species, that were able to override that fear factor, if you will, due to what I can only think of as uh, they they needed to check out what was going on.
Mhm.
They were curious, and curiosity to me spells intelligence, especially curiosity that can be piqued to the point where you're going to abandon any sort of thought for your own safety because you need to find out what's going on, and there they were.
What color were these Bigfoot? I mean, their hair, was it reddish or black or?
If anything, I'd say they were black, similar to that of a North American black bear. They were, well, hey, I can show you if you got them. I just told you earlier I bought this Blackwell pair pelt. So they were either black or very, very dark brown, like this.
Okay, that's that
And
pelt you were talking about. Okay.
yes, yes. So fairly long hair, uh, but very dark black, if not
Mhm.
dark brown. But yeah, and like I say, if there were some soldiers down there from that viewpoint I had, I would have been able to make out their clothing, their uniform and such. But these were all the same color and just covered with hair.
Yeah, you said you're going to do some experimenting with that hair, that pelt, that fur, uh, and because I guess a lot of people you told me earlier, Todd, that a lot of people see these things and they disappear and they just kind of go blend into the forest. And what is your idea on that, Todd?
So anytime somebody, you know, we've got the people like me that again, I'm not a scientist, but I tend to lean toward the natural biological explanation of things. And then there's others that are more into the supernatural, paranormal realm. And so after 30 years, I've heard too many people say certain things that don't make sense to me, but I believe they experienced something, right? So they may have seen what it seemed to them that this thing came from out of nowhere and then just vanished. Um, uh, but you hear things like, oh, they stepped through a portal or went into another dimension or
Yeah.
something. I I don't I don't disagree that they, because again I've heard too many stories from and people that I know personally that they didn't see what appeared to be that. It's just I take exception with perhaps their interpretation of that. And so again, anytime somebody says to me that oh their eyes glow in the dark or they disappear, reappear, and that stuff, my first go to is show me one other species on this planet that has this sort of capacity that you're claiming these things have. And
Mhm.
then we can talk. Because now I got a starting point. Well, I decided really just in the last year that I'm going to try to stand on that third rail, if you will, between the paranormal and the biological and see if I can't bridge that gap. And by that is try to find some natural uh, explanation for what people are, again, seeing, but perhaps misinterpreting. And so uh, I started doing some research uh, and was surprised to find that polar bears aren't white. Go figure. Who knew?
They're
Right?
they're
Well,
what?
here
They're
they
not.
are. They're not white. Serious. Yeah, I was right there. I was like, what? So if you do research it, and it's easy to find, it's just not very well known, but polar bear's fur is actually more tannish than it is white. But they have this extraordinary uh, coat that has guard hairs. These hairs are clear. There's no cortex in them. They're literally clear, uh, that extend just beyond their base coat of fur. And what it does is it gives them the ultimate camouflage because, like fiber optics, they will, these guard hairs will actually pull in the ambient light and surrounding colors and make that bear appear white, and thereby giving it great camouflage in the snow when they're hunting, walrus or seals or what have you. And so this experiment I'm doing, because now I found an example in Mother Nature of this capability, is I've got 1,000 feet of fiber optic wire. I thought we got that around here. Um, it's just clear fiber optics. It's probably about the same gauge as 50-pound fishing, 50-pound test fishing line.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm going to do, I'm going to take half of that hide I just showed you, and I'm going to infuse from the backside thousands. It's going to take some time, but I'm going to infuse thousands of these fiber optic uh, cable, if you will. I don't know if that's the right word, but fiber optic line. I'm going to extend it maybe a half inch beyond this pelt normal hair.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm going to take this hide, I'm going to put it out in the woods under under controlled lighting situations, and just see if that half of the hide can pull in those colors, the green and brown and black and the shadows and whatnot, and make that half of the hide seem to vanish.
Mm-hmm.
But if that's the case, and I have a hunch this theory of mine is going to work, if these things are standing perfectly still and they have that clear guard hair like what polar bears have,
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to see them.
Yeah.
If they move, you might, oh, and you might think, hey, that came from out of nowhere. And then all of a sudden they stop and, oh, it's just vanished. No, it's still there.
Yeah. Hence the people saying that they're dimensional,
Right.
animals. But here's some other things I've heard too that are, I guess, conspiracy theories. They said that the military has captive some of these. They've captured some of these Bigfoot, and they've also, talked about that they know all about the Bigfoot because you see these Black Hawk helicopters all over the place, and it's kind of what do you think about that, Todd? You think that's
Well, I'm not a big conspiracy theorist, to be honest with you. And when you really think about it, I have two points to make on that. One is I believe it's inevitable that somebody somewhere at some point in time is going to find uh, irrefutable evidence, maybe a body or inside of old age, injury, disease, whatever. I mean, it really comes down to odds, and there's not a heck of a lot of these things. I mean, maybe 1,000 across quite a vast um, uh, habitat, several habitats. In fact, the coast range starts Cape Mendocino, California, goes to the Olympic National Forest, and then the Cascade starts in Cape excuse me, Mount Lassen all the way into Canada, the Blue Mountains, you name it. There's so much territory out there, but I think it is inevitable that somebody's going to stumble across one of these.
Yeah.
So if you want to talk about conspiracy, you would have to. You're suggesting that there's a government agent hiding behind every tree and every rock out there waiting for this to happen and then pounce on it. I mean, does that make sense to you? That just doesn't make sense. Now,
yeah, a lot of time and
kind
money.
of like, now I will say this. I mean, you want to compare it to, say, the UFO deal, and as you and I both know that they've actually started what they call UAPs or whatever now, but they've started to kind of come out of the closet, if you will, about a lot of these reports, especially military sightings of these unidentified flying objects.
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't they do it sooner? Because they didn't have to.
Yeah.
When you put it on a scale, and I'm sure they do, anything of this nature that they feel is going to have a dramatic impact on society in general, not just the U.S., but the world, that they put it on a scale. It's like, okay, what are the consequences if we do confirm that we know such a thing exists versus what are the consequences if we just keep our mouth shut? It's a
Mm-hmm.
no-brainer. Why say something if you don't have to?
Yeah.
And why stir the pot? Why get society in an uproar if you don't have to? And I think that's really if they do have information. But again, they can't be, like I say, the government can't be everywhere at once, and especially when you're talking these extremely rural areas like where I live. Somebody comes upon that, there's not going to be anybody there to stop them from bringing that body out, or bits and pieces, whatever. But then you're going to have that forensic DNA that we're all kind of waiting, holding our breath about. But so it doesn't sit well with me to think that they know something and they're not saying anything, because they can't really control that sort of situation. And ultimately, they're either going to have to come out of the closet and say, yeah, we knew that all along.
Yeah.
Like they've kind of done with the UAP.
Right. With the disinformation and misinformation, and with the news, how they're doing things, it's
Right.
really, I this disclosure too of the UAPs, it's going to be a drip, drip, drip. I've never seen a Bigfoot or Sasquatch, but I believe in them because there's been too many people who've seen them, like yourself, and eyewitnesses.
Well, keep in mind the ridicule factor for those that are brave enough to come forward. The Bigfoot whistleblowers or whatever you want to call it, that they have a whole lot more to lose than they stand to gain. And I personally, I would estimate that maybe 1 out of 10 people that have seen these things actually step forward and publicly pronounce it, because I know I was in that place,
Mm-hmm.
mentally, that I was I told you I was in the guard. Well, here I am, non-commissioned officer, but I got a day job too. And at that time, I was a vice president of a shipping company in Oregon. I was a family man, and it's like I worked hard for my reputation. Is it worth it? And again, I think 9 out of 10 people just say no, just file it away in that
Yeah, we have the same
file.
problem with ET and UFO, UAP disclosures,
Okay.
and people that are experiencers. It's like myself, I've written a book and also put some information on another book, an angel book. But I come forward because I know that maybe 50% of the people now believe in UAPs because of the government coming out and disclosing somewhat. not everything, but disclosing somewhat, and that makes me feel vindicated partially, not totally. But I had a
Yeah.
cousin who saw a Bigfoot, and he didn't believe in anything. He didn't believe in witches, ghosts, Bigfoot, ETs. He was a skeptic. Like I always say, he's about as about as dry as a shallow a creek bed, and when it comes to that information. But he saw one day chasing
Black
some
and white.
cattle. Yeah, he just and he come back after he never saw the Bigfoot shows. So I have to give him. He's a great witness because he never saw Bigfoot shows. He don't even know what they look like. He didn't even care, and he didn't believe them. But when he come back home, I mean, to his wife and everything, he told his family that, wow, I saw something that scared the daylights out of me. He said this big tall thing was standing near a tree, and he said he had long arms and he had long hair on his arm, reddish hair. And he said he must have been about 8 feet tall. And he was describing a Bigfoot. And this is a guy who's never, ever looked at a Bigfoot, and he was describing a Bigfoot to the T. So I
Yeah,
can
well, that
believe
was
my
me.
cousin. Yeah.
That was me, and that was me. I'd never read a book on the subject. I never watched a TV program. Excuse me. Now I'm in the books and I'm on TV, but it wasn't publicity that drove me to come forward publicly. It was, I had my own scale to deal with, and I asked myself, is it worth your reputation to come out with this information? And initially I said no. But this sort of experience of seeing something that not not teaching about in school, that's for sure. And
Mhm.
it eats at you, Dave. It drives you insane over time. I've interviewed thousands of
Yeah.
people over 30 years, and where they would find out I'm involved in the research and approach me in some of their stories, and they've been letting it eat them alive for 30, 40 years. I was 12 years old, camping with my family, kind of thing. And I think that's sad because I know I can empathize with them because it is traumatic for certain to see something like that. But at the same time, um, I had to re-ask myself that question. Where I was going was, what's your reputation? And on the grand scheme of things, kind of reworded it to myself, and I go, I saw something scientifically, historically, critically important. I can't unsee it. I shouldn't be embarrassed or ashamed about it. And who am I?
Mhm.
You know. And when I kind of couched it in that mindset, it was like, who who Todd Neiss versus a whole new species? Give me a break. Of course, it's vital and critical, and I felt, you know,
Yeah,
me,
you're
yeah,
just like me. You're into the Bigfoot research. I'm into the ET and UFO research, and I get these first time people on the air and on a show, and they're nervous about talking about it because, like you said, there's a shame factor to it. Uh, you had a subsequent encounter. You have your Omaha Indian Reservation
mm,
in
yeah.
Nebraska, 2020. Could you tell us about that?
Oh my God, yeah. In fact, I was just talking about it last night. So I had been in touch with this gentleman who I'll leave unnamed at the moment, but he was a tribal member with the Omaha tribe, and I had watched several videos and photos he had sent, claimed to have established a relationship with a fairly substantial group of these things on the reservation. Now, if you would have asked me, first off, name 3 states in the continental United States where Bigfoot couldn't possibly be, I think Nebraska would be in that list because it's all flat, cornfields and soybeans. Right? No, actually, I would come to find out that the Missouri River, which divides Iowa and Nebraska, along the banks of those rivers, which is where this Omaha Nation at is actually very I wouldn't call them mountains, but there's just rolling hills that are very, very heavily timbered with hardwoods, maple, oak, and such. Uh, and so one day he invited me to come out, and we're talking about the ice shrine thing, and I'm like, okay, again, I asked the question, show me something else in nature, any species that could generate light or appear to generate light. And I said, what the heck? So I flew out there and spent a week with them. We went out in the field 5 nights in a row. This was during COVID. So, and I only mention that because it was the main village there, Neiss, was locked down. You could not get out of there before 6 in the morning. So between, I think it was 9 p.m. to 6 a.m., everybody had to be in that village. And then unless you had special permission, you could not leave. And just their way of dealing with it. Now, fortunately, this individual I was with was pretty high up in the council, the tribal council. So, we always made some kind of excuse to get out there, and we go out from midnight to 2 o'clock, sometimes 2:30 in the morning, pitch black, no moon that I can recall. In fact, I think it was a little overcast, but this was in the fall. 5 nights in a row. 5 nights in a row, we had encounters, and I truly believe these were genuine encounters. Um, and my first go-to is, am I being pranked? Am I being hoaxed?
Mm-hmm.
But thinking A, where we're at, B, that the town's locked down from COVID, and um, it just uh, I think if somebody came to me and said, or I came to you today, and I go, hey, you want to see Bigfoot tonight? You'd probably go, you're not.
Yeah, I would. I'd say, sure, let's go.
It's like you coming to me saying, hey, you want to see a UFO tonight? Yeah,
Yeah.
sure, sign me up.
Yeah.
But no, then if you came to me and said, I would like to see one 5 nights in a row, I'm like, you need some help, dude. That's
Mm-hmm.
just not how it happens. Well, that is how it happened.
Yeah.
I can't explain it other than he has established a relationship over several years. He can call them in. He would talk in his native language. He would say, here we go. Again, I can't see the hand in front of my face. It's that dark, and we made sure there were no lights on anyway.
Right.
And he's like, "Oh, doggy," which means hello, friend, my friend. And then he would, I can't make this up. 20, 30, 15, 20, 30 seconds. But I'm looking at what looks like two glowing eyes, and they're blinking, and they're moving left and right, and they're actually physically walking, and sometimes two, sometimes even three at a time. And I'm just like, no way. But it wasn't just that I shine. There were vocalizations, ungodly vocalizations that no animal you could not associate with any animal out there. So I mean, and this happened in two locations on the reservation. It was a mind-blowing experience, and I really consider it kind of a highlight of my 30 years of research. In
Did you
fact,
get it?
I
Did you get
sent
any
two.
recordings?
You're gonna kill me. You're gonna kill me. When we talk about technical issues that always kind of go,
Yeah.
it seemed to
Yep.
follow us.
Yep.
I did not expect to go out in the field with him, and but I did bring with me what we call a Taz cam. Actually it's not a camera. It's a digital recorder, very very sensitive digital record for like 18 hours straight, and I didn't have it with me that first night. That's the night I really wish I had it, because we had this one, I assume was a female, that kind of, the vocalization she made sounded like a song. I know that sounds crazy,
Mhm.
but she did four separate verses, about 5 to 6 seconds long, with maybe 10 seconds between them, and she would do it four times within a minute, and it wasn't scary a bit. It was loud, um, but what struck me was each time she did this little chorus, it was exactly the same. It changed in notes, it changed in volume, it changed in rhythm, and it repeated itself. So to me, these aren't random roars, howls, screams, and whatnot that you hear. But this was anytime you got that kind of reputation, that's there's a meaning to it, and that means there's a language.
Yeah.
And but it was amazing. But so to answer your story, on the third day I went out. Now I figured out how to get to this spot, but and I was really jonesing to see it in daylight. And so I was supposed to meet up with this fella on the reservation that evening to get ready to go out there and do it all over again. But I decided I'm going to go a little bit early, and I'm going to go out there daylight, because I want to see I want to see what I'm not seeing. I want to see the backdrop. I want to see where they're standing, which was maybe 120 feet from us. Um, and I wanted to make sure there was no ambient, backlights from houses or, street lights or anything else that could
Right.
account for this. And what I found was it was really a large hill. Uh, so there was nothing, but I had to see it. So I parked my car there. I walk up there. Now I got that recorder, right? Smart guy. So I decided I'm going to go up in daylight, because certainly they got to sleep. And if they're up at 2 o'clock in the morning, they must sleep during the day, be nocturnal or what have you. So I traipse up to where I assume that they're standing, and I turn on that tape recorder. I see the red light come on. I put it, buried it with some leaves, and I'm thinking when these things come back tonight, I'm gonna get something, because there were several vocalizations, and they were different, each of them, and I'm going to do this. Well, I no sooner turned on the recorder and stand up when, from my 10 o'clock, I hear this same creature, I guarantee you, coming from the same area. It's like 2 in the afternoon. And she does that song, but she only did it once. But I'm telling you, it was exactly what I heard 3 nights earlier.
So this
And I'm
Indian
like,
guide, Todd, this Indian guide or Indian chief, and there is no
mm-hmm.
chief anymore. The elders they call them. Forgive me for that little slip up. I did that one time out west, and I got chastised for that one. But for the elders or shamans, they have also. Now I've heard also that they talk about Bigfoot, the Native American Indians,
Oh, no.
but they talk about it, but they also put it in the category of the skinwalker. Can you separate that idea, Todd?
So I picked up, when I came back to my civilian uh, life, after that experience in '93, I picked up anything, everything I could find on the subject, and it was actually a gentleman named Ray Crow who ran the Western Bigfoot Society. He's since passed, but he was part Native American, and he gave me a book that was written in the '50s called uh, Indian Legends of the Pacific Northwest. It's no longer in print, but it wasn't about Bigfoot per se. It was about, the coyote, these the owl, the raven, the snake, the coyote,
Right.
the wolf, and all the different sort of powers that they ascribed to them. But I'll be damned, as I went through this, I found so many references to, and they don't call it Bigfoot. And the really interesting thing is they don't refer to them like they do other animals. They describe them as an ancient tribe of humans, I imagine, or early Indians. In fact, they call them the first ones or the old ones, and noting that they were here before we even got here. You know, and I believe what we're dealing with is not an ape, so to speak, or a crossbreed so much, but I think it is a relic hominid, not humanoid, but hominid, that they stumbled across when they migrated here to the Pacific Northwest and North America.
Yeah, the Gigantopithecus or something like that. Yeah.
Well, no, the Gigantopithecus, that was kind of my first go-to, which is an ancient primate that did walk at least occasionally. We know they walked upright just due to their joint structure.
Mhm.
But I kind of bought into that theory. Thought they may have somehow gone, because they would find these remnants in China, Vietnam, and Kamchatka, but that migration route, which we know humans took across what was then known as Beringia, a land bridge from Russia to what's now Alaska.
Alaska, yeah.
They couldn't have done that. They just couldn't have. They couldn't have survived. Period. The no, based on the vegetation and the resources that they required, I don't think it was Gigantopithecus. And again, going back to the Native Americans, um, stating quite uh, flatly that they were here when we got here. And at least in the Pacific Northwest, most of your Native Americans did come from Asia one way or the other. But think about it. They've been here. We just recently found one of the oldest um, um, civilizations, the oldest human uh, evidence in North America dates back between 21,000 and 23,000 years. How long we been here, Dave? I mean, really,
Yeah.
we've been here maybe 300 years, especially if we're talking
Oh,
West Coast, maybe
oh yeah.
300 years.
Yeah, in America,
Who,
yes. 400, yeah.
who do you think has more knowledge of these things? You know,
Oh,
I
yes.
used when I got back from having that sighting, I made a beeline to the library, and I don't think I'd been in a library in years, but I checked out everything I wanted to know, the latest, newest, greatest,
Hmm.
most current information. And about 6 months into it, I thought, no. All these books have been written in the last 50 years. And I did a 180, and I'm thinking, no, I want to find the oldest information I can find. And of course, that takes you to Native Americans. And
Right.
I have found more information from Native Americans uh, uh, based on them having lived symbiotically with these creatures for over 20,000 years.
Hmm.
It's a little difficult to get them to open up to non-natives, but I've over the years worked my way into their good graces, and they've been willing to share. And there are literally dozens and dozens of different names they all call them, but
Yeah.
they describe the same, certainly the same
Don't
species.
they don't they have totem poles built
Oh,
carved like a Bigfoot? Yeah.
oh yeah, absolutely. And the
That's in
ones you
your
want to
area.
look for.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, British Columbia. I did an expedition in British Columbia in 2016 called um, Operation Sea Monkey, which is where we set out to go uh, explore these islands called the Broughton Archipelago between mainland British Columbia and Vancouver Island, and we spent a week doing that. And the totems up there are just you got to look for the one feature that seems to be predominant is them with an open mouth
Hmm.
like this,
Yeah.
and maybe hands,
Right.
because they're known for making these vocalizations, very powerful vocalizations that you can hear for miles in some cases. But oh
Maybe,
yeah,
yeah, maybe you
many
can
of the
answer.
totems
Yeah,
have that.
yeah, maybe you can answer this one, Todd. When they make that low rumble, a gut rumble, they call it. They can actually mesmerize you or kind of dumb you down a little bit by that vibration that they emit. Is that true?
Uh, so what you're talking about is what's known as infrasound.
Infrasound, right?
Now, again, my first go-to is show me one other animal that can do that. Well, I can show you alligators, elephants, whales,
Yeah,
tigers.
right.
All can do this infrasound. It's difficult to measure because it's literally below our hearing range as
Yeah,
humans.
20
But
hertz.
they
Yeah.
have equipment designed now that can pick up on that and realize it's happening. And yeah, they do believe that when they do that, it's both a form of communication and may actually have some sort of a stunning effect, kind of
Mhm.
like what you described. I'll tell you this, in 1998, so 5 years after my sighting, I put together an expedition uh, not far from where I had my sighting in the Oregon Coast Range, at the base of Saddle Mountain. And I had borrowed some equipment from the North American Science Institute, formerly the Bigfoot Research Project. And in this case, it was seismic ground sensors. And these sensors, I actually have a kit of four of them that I from the Army. Didn't say that aloud.
Okay.
You might want to censor that. Anyway, so no, but anyway, they will literally pick up vibration in the ground, and depending on the substrate, say a perfect substrate would be like a football field,
Hmm.
grass. You know, I can actually set them off at 100 yards away just by stomping my foot. They're very, very sensitive. In fact, there's 5 selections, and if I go past 3 on sensitivity, the rain, just the patter of rain will set them off. But anyway, I went to install these. I was with Peter Byrne, uh, rest his soul. He just passed a couple weeks ago. And Ron Moorhead, you may know him from the Sierra Sounds
Yes.
recordings. They were both along with me, and Ron had flown his plane in there. Don't mean to go off on a tangent, but it kind of plays into it. So Ron had flown his personal airplane nearby Seaside, and we had horrible weather. We were hoping to use the plane for aerial reconnaissance, and unfortunately, the weather just was not working. And then day 6, we got a little break in the weather, and Ron said, I hate to do this, but even though I'm instrument rated, I'd prefer to go out VHR. Um, um, so Peter took off to take Ron down to the airport so he could fly out visually, and left me there by myself. So I'm going up above our base camp. I'm installing these when a hailstorm now comes in. It's just par for the course, and I decided I wouldn't be able to get down to our base camp in time, so I decided, to avoid this hailstorm. So I went up into the old growth timber, figuring I'll use these. It's gonna pass, and I'll just use these big old, never before harvested old growth trees as giant umbrellas, and wait for this to pass. While I was up there, I had to answer the call of nature. Um, uh, Number one. And so I so so I do my business, and I'm buckling my belt when off to my left I was hit with an extremely powerful. Now this was audible, roaring scream from maybe 75, 80 feet away, but hiding back behind this hedge of salal and scotchfield. didn't show itself. But there's nothing, I can tell you, there's nothing out there that you can associate that crazy, incredibly powerful
Yeah, guttural.
vocalization about. Is that, yeah, I heard it, but is that to say there wasn't a lower frequency infrasound embedded in that as well? Because I'll tell you this, my friend Dave, I could not move. I could not move. I've never, I mean, you and I don't know about you, but I've been shot at with
Yeah.
mortars and rockets
Mhm.
and heavy gunfire in Iraq. I have never experienced this threshold of abject fear, and I honestly hope I don't
Were
again,
were
because
you was your whole body numb or what? Todd?
I felt like I was like somebody had attached a battery to me. I was buzzing,
Yeah.
like, and I kind of later I wrote it off as just adrenaline, and it very well could be. I don't know, but there was something that had this little devil on one shoulder going, run, run for your life, and this other one over here saying, if you want to live through this, don't even blink.
Mhm.
And there was no question that whatever generated that vocalization knew I was there, and I
Yeah.
know exactly why it did what it did. I
Yeah.
mismarked its territory.
Yeah. You were trespassing.
And I have now got 7 accounts of this very same thing happening to males only, all 7 of them males, 7 including myself, that urinated in the middle of freaking nowhere and were in one way, shape, or the other uh, dealt with.
Right.
In
Yeah. With
my
the
case,
sound.
in my case, like I said, I felt like I was hooked up to a battery, and I did not move. My
Mhm.
hands remained on my belt buckle. I didn't move. I don't even think that I blinked
Yeah.
for 2 hours. Excuse me, 2 minutes, and I couldn't move.
Yeah.
That's what I can tell you is I couldn't move. Now, if in fact this infrasound is a way of communication,
Or
okay,
controlling.
or both.
Yeah.
But if they could do that to me, imagine them do it to a herd of deer
Yeah. Right.
and they all just freeze.
Yeah.
Well, didn't
Can you
happen.
believe it, Todd? We're running up on the hour, and
Oh,
you
goes by
organize.
so quick.
Yeah. Are you organize 9 expeditions? Could you tell us about the American Primate Conservancy just real quick?
Yeah, so back in 2015, I put together a nonprofit organization called American Primate Conservancy, and it's based on the discovery, research, knowledge or data, uh, recognition, which is kind of where we're at now, and you can imagine it has to happen in that order, and protection. But without recognition, you're not going to get that protection. So
Mhm.
again, going back to Native Americans, I've been working with 5 different tribes and trying to get them to, because they have their own autonomy on their reservations, which are, yeah, technically nations
Yeah.
within our nation.
Could you tell us how to get a hold of you through the American Primate Conservatory? And are there, I know I got your, I will put this in the narrative
Sure.
in the video. I will put these
Well, I
addresses.
do have a website that is uh, constantly under construction and really needs some attention. I've got to get to.
Yeah.
It's americanprimate.org.
Hmm.
I can be reached by email, americanprimate
Mhm.
at AOL.com. Yeah, I'm still
Okay.
one of the 3 people that still have
And
AOL.
and I admire you because you're a boots on the ground type of guy and investigating on your expeditions and also your foundations that you're working with. I really
Thank you.
appreciate it. I wish we had more time to get involved in those maybe some other time. But you've been listening to Dave Emmons, A Strange Reality, and Todd and Neiss. I guess the middle initial is N, right? I got that right?
Mitchell is my
Okay.
middle name, yeah.
Yeah. Todd Neiss. And he's a great, I've been trying to get him on the show for a while, and he's got a lot more he could tell us. And we just went over the basics here, but we want to thank you very much for sticking around and listening to Todd Neiss and the Dave Emmons show with us, Strange Reality and Bigfoot. Thank you so much.